Welcome to the Fireside Gathering with the authors of I Didn't Become Selfish, I Became Harder to Manipulate, sharing more of their experiences and wisdoms learned, hosted by Sara Jane. You can go to vocalreiki.com/fireside gathering to find all the authors and where you can purchase the book. Do enjoy.
Welcome to the Fireside Gathering of the authors of I Didn't Become Selfish, I Became Harder to Manipulate. I'm Sara Jane, and I am delighted to welcome for this program Heather Prince. Hi, Heather.
Hello.
And David McLeod. Hello, David. Hello. Both of whom agreed to join me in the book and have shared their story and their wisdom. So thank you to both of you. Heather, you wrote chapter 4, A Life Reclaimed. Share a little about yourself and why you chose to participate in the book.
I have been involved in the healing world for a very, very long time. I've been teaching meditation for 30 years after I spun off from a psychic development circle where I was trained to do hands-on healing. But for me, I was led into the world of clearing the Akashic records and the shadows of our ancestors that can go back 6 to 8 generations, like betrayal, abuse, abandonment, all of those kinds of things. And as I developed, I realized that I was moving onwards and upwards. And at the time, I was with my childhood sweetheart, met him before I was 16 years old, and he was kind of there, which didn't make me any better or him any lesser. It was just that I wished to go forward and reach my full potential. And he was okay where he was, and decided, going back 15 years ago now, that we had completed our marriage, our relationship. And therefore, that your title of I Didn't Become Selfish, I Became Harder to Manipulate was relevant to me, because I wasn't wishing to be selfish and move forward with my career and the work that I do with clients. I didn't want to be controlled by my man. I didn't want to be told, no, you can't do this. No, you shouldn't be doing that. No, why are you getting involved with holistic products and all that kind of thing? I wanted to make my own decisions. I wasn't a little girl anymore. So that's why, Sara Jane, when you came along with the project, I wanted to share my story.
Bless you. Thank you. David, chapter 2, Mind Over Manipulation, From Puppet to Powerhouse, Reclaim Your Sovereignty, Stand in Your Truth. Share a little about yourself and why you chose to participate in the book.
Well, thank you, Sara. Well, first of all, I've known you for, I think, 15 years now. We have been good friends. We've shared all kinds of different situations like that. You participated in my book, Gifts of Wisdom, and so when you proposed this topic, I thought, hey, first of all, I think it's a great title. I love the title, and I thought, yeah, manipulation is something that we all have to deal with. Something that I certainly had to deal with from a very young age, but I didn't realize that was what was happening to me. I didn't realize that my mother, in her infinite wisdom, when she said to me, I know you better than you know yourself, she was planting a little seed in me that I'm sure she had maybe she did have some conscious intention of this. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to, ever talk to her about it because she has long passed. But the point is, she said that, and for a 3-year-old boy to hear something like that, I think in my mind, I'm now thinking about this from the perspective of an adult. I have no idea what I thought when I was 3 years old, but I imagine my thinking went along the lines of, well, she knows me better than anybody else does. She loves me. She takes care of all my wants and needs. I know my mom would never lie. So it must be true. she knows me better than I know myself. So the moment I accepted that, I all of a sudden I started thinking, my horizons expanded, and I said, well, if mommy knows me better than I know myself, then daddy does too. And that means that Grammy and Grampy know me better than I know myself. That means my Aunt Marguerite knows me better than I know myself. That means my friends know me. You get my point. Before I knew it, I had established a belief system in my mind that said everybody knows me better than I know myself. And therefore, I have to defer to everybody. I have to look to everybody else to find out who I am, to figure out what I want and need, all that stuff. So I effectively put myself in the middle of the manipulation pot, if you like, and I just kind of allowed life to manipulate me for the next close to 40 years. Now, I also, I guess I expected, because I'm supposed to do this, I'm expecting that success and happiness and all the trappings that go along with that would start showing up in my life. And to be sure, some of the collectibles, like a house and a family and 2 cars and all that kind of stuff, those things did show up, but I just didn't have that feeling of success, the feeling of happiness. And so I was feeling cheated. And I'm thinking, wow, I allowed myself to be manipulated all this time. I didn't realize, I still wasn't using that word manipulated, by the way. But I allowed myself to be guided and directed, shall we say, according to the dictates of society for all this time. And I have nothing to show for it that even resembles happiness. And so that's where, for me, I had to kind of break out of that mold, and I had to understand, where did that thinking pattern come from? And I went through a process of kind of unraveling all of it until eventually I came to an understanding that there's nothing more important than knowing the truth of who I really am and expressing and experiencing that. Right? And so that became my true awareness. That became my new mission. And it all happened when I was about 50 years old. But in terms of personal growth, I was still just a youngster. I was a toddler figuring out how to live life. But what I realized is a lot of what we do in personal growth looks to other people like selfishness. And so what I began to realize is selfishness is not really what we think it is. Selfishness is more about being true to who I really am and not being overly concerned with what other people want or think, right? And it's not that I don't care what people think or I don't care about their opinions. It's just that I'm not going to let their opinions decide for me how I'm supposed to show up anymore. That is over. And so if someone chooses to no longer have a relationship with me because I'm not the same person that I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever, that's cool. It's like Heather said, sometimes, we move to a different level and it's time to move on. So I'm sorry, I went on a little long there, but that's kind of my answer for today.
Thank you, David. And I think it's really important, because the idea of the book was to support people that feel they're being coerced, manipulated, controlled, bullied, etc., right, to realize that they can take their courage in their hands and go, stop, no more, I'm not putting up with this.
Right.
And in each of our and the stories, some have got similarities, but the feelings, etc., people reading the stories can realize that men and women, it's not just all about women, it's men and women. And years ago, I worked with a guy, and he was self-harming because of what was happening at home with the lady he was living with. And to me, that is just so sad that people get to that stage. And people can go beyond that stage. This is saying you don't have to put up with it. We realized we didn't have to put up with it. And we were happy to say, stop. No more. That's the end. This is my life. And I don't see that as selfish. Not the true meaning, the dictionary meaning of the word selfish, which is when it is all about you to the detriment of others. Now, I know some people turn around and say, yes, but you saying no is detrimental to me. Well, that's your perception of it. That's not my perception. That's me giving you the courage to actually do something yourself. I'm saying no to support two of us to move on rather than neither of us to move on. And I know different people see the word selfish in different ways. My personal opinion is, if I said to you, oh, Heather, David, would you do this for me? And you turn around and said no, and I said, oh, you are being selfish. I'm the one being selfish for expecting you to do what doesn't feel right, you haven't got time for, etc. It doesn't matter the reason. Me expecting you to do things for me will help. All of us will help people whenever we can, but I'm a great believer in helping people to help themselves, not necessarily doing it for them.
It's that old story, isn't it? It's that old story of don't go and fish for someone, teach them how to fish.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Give someone a fish and they eat for a day. Give someone a fishing rod and they can eat for the rest of their lives and potentially feed others and start earning a living.
Yeah. I was going to say, you mentioned about this person who was self-harming as a result of who knows what was going on there. And of course, when you said that, I'm assuming you're talking about physical self-harm. But the fact of the matter is, those of us who allow ourselves to continue to be manipulated are self-harming in a maybe non-physical way. And so to me, selfishness is the opposite of self-harm. In a very real way, the moment I can wake up enough to realize that I'm important enough to take care of, I'm important enough and worthy enough to love, when I can get to that place in my life and I can allow that to just be a reality and not worry so much about what everything out there has to say about me. That, I guess, technically speaking, is a form of selfishness, but I don't care. I think that is absolutely necessary in order for me to continue to grow.
I think you used a word there, David, which is really relevant, and it's worth, and it's about self-worth. And other people will always have an opinion, and that's okay. When you have high self-worth, it doesn't hurt in the heart space. It's not an arrow that can pierce and hurt you. You just think, okay, that's their opinion, but I know I'm being authentic. I know I'm being true to myself. And I think that's where a lot of people have a struggle when their self-worth isn't at its full potential.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. Love that. Okay. David, I'm going to stay with you. Your little topic you added to this is the upside of selfishness. So share what you mean by that, please.
Well, I think I've already been alluding to that in my conversation so far. I think there's a problem here in that we have this notion that to be selfish is somehow bad. It's a bad thing. And you described it as part of your definition of when I'm thinking only about myself to the detriment of others. That I believe that's how you framed it. And I think that, there's some truth to that for sure. But when I am being truly selfish, that is to say, focusing on my true self, which is my spiritually empowered life force and not this little mini mind that, not my ego mind that kind of tries to run things. When I'm focusing on my soul and my true self nature, that part of what I'm talking about, to me, there's nothing more valuable than doing that, because then I'm allowing my soul to begin running my life rather than my ego mind. And when I do that, my whole life shifts and changes for the better. I become more aligned with who I really am. I become more aligned with my true purpose for being here. I connect in with a true sense of purpose that represents the essence of who I really am. All of those things start to happen when I get truly selfish in that spiritual sense, rather than in the ego mind sense. So I think that's what I'm talking about. So the upside of that form of selfishness is powerful growth, to the point that you just go way beyond anything you may have had before that, and start realizing your potential is much, much bigger than you ever imagined. So that's, to me, what the upside of selfishness is.
Bless you. Thank you. Heather, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that we're obviously molded by our primary caregivers, parents, teachers, people that influenced us as young ones. And if they turn around and say, oh, you're being selfish, it makes an imprint. And as an adult, you can look back and think, well, was I really being selfish? And I think that, you know, having an upside to being selfish is being true to self, is being authentic, is not doing it because of the will or manipulation or control of someone else. And I think a lot of parents do that. If you do this, you'll get that. And if you don't do that, oh, you're being selfish. So I think that we have to be really careful with the responsibility of how we influence the future generation and their understanding of it's okay to say no. It's okay to not go with the herd, that you can do what feels right for you without thinking, oh, I'm being selfish. You know, if somebody needs space and they say, I need some time out, is that being selfish, or are they looking after their own mental health, emotional health, physical health? It's all interrelated. So, yeah, I think that we need to get these discussions going so that people can actually think about it and decide actually that they're actually going to do what feels right for them.
Yeah, you know, I was going to just say, first of all, I think we have to throw away that word selfish. It should be banned from the English language, like so many others, like the word should, should or must, or, you know, we got to start thinking in terms of possibilities and not restricting ourselves. That's what I think. So instead of saying I should, I can reframe that as I could. It now becomes a possibility. It becomes something that I can consider as an option in my list of available choices. Changing our frame, our language a little bit, and reframing things to be more uplifting and empowering and so forth. I think that's really powerful. You know, I want to go back to something you said, Heather. You were talking about the imprinting and the molding and the conditioning that happens through childhood. I couldn't agree with you more on that. But I noticed that my mother's form of manipulation was a lot more subtle. I don't remember my mom ever, well, she probably did say you're being selfish from time to time, but it was more often she would use words like, I'd come up with an idea, I'd have an idea about something, just, oh, don't be ridiculous. That was her way of manipulating me to think something different. In other words, she was telling me, your thoughts are stupid. She didn't ever use that word, but your thoughts are stupid. You've got to learn some new ones that align with my thoughts. That was the message that was being given to a little boy. And I think many parents use that approach, you know?
Yes, my mum loved the word ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was one of her favourite words,
Yeah.
bless her. She's not here anymore. But you're not aware when you're not an adult. You are extremely influenced by those around you. And it's only when you're older and you can reflect and consider, oh, I behave this way because I've always been the person that, you know, agrees for a quiet life or whatever it is. So I think that it's people that want to do work on themselves, people that want to understand, as you say, understand yourself, not, you know, your mum. Of course your mum knows you, but only you as an adult really know yourself. When you know, the kids are little, you know, their likes and their dislikes and their fears and whatever. But as an adult, it's important. Part of when I work with someone and I'm building self-worth is we start with self-awareness. So there's steps to it before you gain the full self-worth. So I think self-awareness is key.
Absolutely. Yep.
You mentioned the word should, the word should. You can also change that to I get the chance to.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, it is. It's, what was it my youngest sister said quite some time ago, and it's the English dictionary. There are over 6,000 negative words to around 2,000 positive words.
Oh, I think the
And
ratio
so,
is higher than that, honestly, because there are
well,
hundreds of thousands of words in our English dictionary. So, yeah. But one, you know, you talk about this negativity thing. I remember there was a study done probably in the 1980s or something, where a group of people were just following kids around in kindergarten and listening to what they said and listening to their self-talk, just making notes. And it turned out that they would negatively talk to themselves about 80% of the time. And I honestly think that's a natural human trait. I don't think that's necessarily taught to us. I think that's what we do. We have these ego minds that are constantly nagging at us. And it may be partly triggered by our environment, but I think it's part of our nature as well. So the learning there is we have to make an effort really to find the positive elements and focus on the positive. It takes effort. Even with all the work I've done, I still hear my ego mind telling me how I'm doing things wrong. You know, and I have to correct it. I have to say, thank you for that piece of information. And I'm really delighted that you're trying to keep me safe. I really appreciate that. And I got it now. Thank you so much. So, yeah.
David, it's the protector. It's our inner protector.
Right.
So yeah, I get that. And I think that when teachers have teacher training, wouldn't it be lovely if they start with the little ones of affirmations of I am powerful, and play the game of, if you had a superpower, what would it be? Because our imaginations are absolutely our superpower.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Absolutely.
Sarah. I just wanted to jump in with that.
Yeah, no, David. I'm very aware you do that. And that's great because it's meant to be a conversation. So, right, Heather. From rock bottom to radiance, rebuilding life after long-term love ends. What I can guess what you mean by that, but share what you mean by that.
Okay, I think that the many women that I have worked with have felt rock bottom when the relationship ends. You know, some of them chose to end it themselves because they didn't want to take the crumbs that were being offered and they wanted something better. Some of them were not open to it ending, and it was their other partner that wanted the relationship to end. But whichever way it is, they kind of feel rock bottom. There's either guilt because they've done it, or disbelief if someone else said it, all those kind of things. So there's a journey to go on. When you're with someone, you can have what I call the starfish legs locked off. So your self-belief can get locked off, your self-love, your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-respect. If you've been with someone that says, oh, nobody's going to want you, and you're stupid, or look how much weight you've let yourself go, and all different things that, you know, is said. And it's important to regenerate. So you go from rock bottom, where you've been locked off, to regenerate and become whole again, where you do feel radiant and confident and have the belief in yourself, and know that you are worthy of having somebody in your life who compliments you, who enhances your life, who supports your ideas and doesn't go, oh, don't be stupid, what do you want to do that for? All that kind of thing. So that's where I'm coming from.
No, bless you. David, your thoughts from, because it happens to men and women, but I know obviously you obviously work with women, but a man's perspective on this.
Well, I guess in my experience, I've had the experience happen to me where I thought I had hit rock bottom, and I had done some work, and then only discovered later that there was a lot more bottom to be found. Yeah, it's not always clear when you have reached rock bottom. That's a tough one to define. But what I have now come to realize is no matter where you are, there's going to be a point where you're feeling as low as you can possibly feel in this current state of consciousness. And you can stay there if you want to, and, you know, shall we say, roast in your own juices, or whatever it is you like to call it. Or you can say, what am I here to learn? What am I here to gain? What is the perspective that I should be looking for here? You can ask questions like that and maybe begin to see something that explains the reason that you allowed yourself to be in that rock bottom place in the first place. There's something here for you to learn, obviously. And maybe you weren't paying attention to maybe less challenging messages that the universe was sending you before you got there. That happens to all of us. And so for me, it's about being willing to look at my true self and say, okay, what qualities have I allowed to come forth in my life that brought me into this position? Do I want to keep those qualities, or I want to transform them? Do I want to do something new? You know, Heather, you talked about self-awareness. Well, that's kind of what I'm talking about here. Becoming aware of myself, becoming aware of my thoughts, my words, my actions and emotions, becoming aware of every aspect of myself and maximizing that level of awareness. Because without that awareness, then I cannot see any choices in front of me. And even if I did see choices, I wouldn't be choosing from a place of awareness. So for me, this idea of rock bottom is it's just a place, an energetic place that everyone can get to from time to time. And you can then, once you're there, you can decide what you want to do with your life. And some people choose a way out, you know, and God bless them if that's their choice. By all means, you know, that's your choice. Not my recommended behavior. I prefer to continue living and maximizing myself and just learning whatever I can. You know, in my own case, that rock bottom got to a point where I had pills in my hand and liquor in my other hand. And I couldn't quite bring myself to take those pills. I drank a lot of liquor, but the pills I couldn't quite bring myself to take. And thank God, because who knows what would have happened. You know, well, I wouldn't be here, for one thing. But what impact would that have had on my kids? What impact would that have had on other members of my family? So instead, I cleaned myself up. You know, I stood up, dusted myself off a little bit. And I didn't stay. I wasn't perfectly clean when that happened. You know, there was still some dirt I had to go through. I still had to crawl through some crap to get out of my pit of despair. I had to do work. And work of the best possible kind, as it turned out. You know, yeah. So I don't know. I guess we all have our own version of what rock bottom is. I just want to make sure that everybody's understanding that. And in my case, like I said, I thought I'd already reached it, and then I went to an even deeper level of rock bottomness. So it happens, and each of us is going to have our own unique experience of that. My recommendation, my invitation is learn as much as you can about yourself and take advantage of the wisdom that other people want to share with you when they see you struggling.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I hit rock bottom, but how I termed it was that, and this was with my second husband, that we were living in parallel ruts. His was lined with rose petals and mine was lined with rose thorns. And I got to the stage, especially as I'd had the broken jaw, the 6 months of pain and sleepless nights, I was exhausted, got to that point was, I can't do this anymore. And I remember my mother's reaction when I phoned her and said I've finished the marriage. And it was just like, look what you're giving up. We had a £5,000 mortgage, and this was 25 plus years ago. No, more than that, 20, 27, 28, 29 years ago, nearly 30 years ago. We owned everything in the house. We had 4 holidays every year. And I felt like a slave in my own home.
Right.
And we were together 11 years. Before we got married, it was fine. It was once we got married. And it's only a couple of years ago when because of all the work I've done, that I was able to look back and think, he became his father. How his father used to be with his mother. And I just thought, that's what he did. That ring was on my finger. He'd got the piece of paper. That was now how he was meant to behave. Would I have coped with it better if I'd have understood that all those years ago? I don't know. And we'll never know, because we haven't got the parallels of the experiences. We can only, and I think this is really, really important for people to realise, you can only make decisions and actions from the knowledge you have at the time.
Right.
Don't wait necessarily to see whether you get any more knowledge. If something is that uncomfortable, do something about it, whether that's asking for marriage counselling or partnership counselling or whatever it is. But if, for me, it was, okay, that's it, finished. I'm out of here. I actually genuinely didn't believe he wished to be in that marriage any more than I then did.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To have the reaction, oh, but I've got everything I ever wanted, and that includes you.
Mm.
Well, you could have fooled me. And he did. And there was nothing that could be done about it. It was way too late. And I hope I learned from it, and I hope that he learned from it. I am now extremely happily single.
Yeah.
And I've stayed that way but no, I think some of us, it's fine. And I'm not saying I would never have another relationship. I have a wonderful gentleman friend. He's like a big brother. And yes, we share a house, but it's not that sort of relationship. We class ourselves as being single because we are. And we're happy with that. Some people can't live on their own. But it would be, give yourself the chance to do that, if that is what happens, so that you get the real chance to find yourself.
Right.
To get to know yourself. I think that's really important for each and every one of us. If we require the space to do that, give ourselves that. Even if it's only once a week for an hour or whatever, make sure we get the space that is me time time for us, doing whatever. Me, I love my daily walks, and that's great. I go and do those. I'm on my own. No phone, no nothing. I'm on my own. They're my me time. So whatever it is that works with you, for you. So I'm going to say thank you, but I'm also going to say, is there anything you'd like to, you don't think we've touched on, that you just like to add at the end, Heather?
I think we've touched on a lot, and I think it's wonderful that you've just shared something that's very personal to you. And, you know, I've recently worked with a lady this week who's also happy on her own. She's not necessarily right now seeking a life partner because she's focused on doing a master's degree. And I think I've just read a book called One Thing. And it's important in life just to focus on one thing. When I'm working with someone, I look at the life wheel, I look at 8 aspects of your potential, but you can only focus on one aspect at a time. So if anyone's watching this and they just need their time, their space, their self-awareness to build their self-worth, etc., it's really important. And then in a few years down the line, if you happen by divine timing to meet someone who you resonate with, you will be a wiser individual. You'll be clearer about what your needs are and what your, you know, your primary, you know, wishes are. And I think it just changes everything.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes, thank you. David, any final thoughts?
Well, I think, as Heather said, we've covered a lot of good stuff here today. I think the message that I'd like people to go away from or take away from this, please look in the mirror and recognize that you are a divine, magnificent, unlimited, sovereign, spiritual being of light and love. And you just happen to be having this temporary human experience on the physical plane. And you're doing it perfectly. So love yourself and honor yourself and be true to yourself in every moment.
Bless you both. Thank you so very much. Folks, if there's anything that's resonated with you, you will find information, the bios, the websites, and a little write-up on each of the topics beneath the page where you found this video, or if you're watching via YouTube, you will find it in the information below the video. Please, if there's something that resonates, something you think you'd like to actually connect with somebody, any of these programs, any of the beautiful authors of this book, please reach out. We have done this to support people. That is why we've done this. Our true life stories, our wisdom learnt from what we've experienced, what has worked for us. Not everything will resonate with you, but what we genuinely hope is something will that will support you to be able to take your life back, become yourself, and not feel that you have to look outside of yourself when actually all you require is right there inside of you. And that is what we're really hoping we can help you to find. So take care, be safe, stay well. Namaste, sweet soul.
Namaste.